Top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Subriel Matias versus Jeremias Ponce. Puerto Rico versus Argentina for the IBF title. Let's talk about the fight.
I made up my mind about this one a long time ago. I went with Subriel Matias.
For those of you that might have missed it here on the channel, those of you that might have missed it on Twitter, I've gone with Subriel Matias to win this fight and become this division's newly crowned IBF champion for some time now because Jeremias Ponce, God bless him, he's a capable fighter, a tough guy.
But you don't want to get into a tough man contest with Subriel Matias. You don't want to bang in the booth with this guy.
That is more or less Jeremias Ponce's methodology, who got off to a very strong start in the first round, thoroughly outworking Subriel Matias and backing him off.
A great shot selection in the pocket.
Uppercuts and body shots in the first round. He seemed to have snappier punches than Subriel Matias.
He got off to a strong start, and he did outwork him in that round. He seemingly had the heavier shots, at least in the first round he did.
But looks can be deceiving when it comes to Subriel Matias. His shots, they're not always as eye-catching as someone else's, say a Regis Prograis, or, in this instance, a Jeremias Ponce. But his shots are actually quite heavy, and you can only take so many of them before he starts to break you down. In the second round,
I gave that round to Subriel.
Where Ponce outfought Subriel in the first round, Subriel turned the tide in the second, landed some eye-catching shots, big punches in the second round.
Phone booth fight?
A close quarters fight throughout. The third round, at least at the start through the middle, it was a tight round that looked like you could have swung it either way, but Subriel Matias did well to steal it towards the tail end of the round.
He hurt Ponce in that round.
In the third round. In the fourth round, which I also gave to Subriel Matias, you could see the damage starting to set in on Ponce.
The third, the fourth, the fifth, he was looking like a man who was worse for wear.
The difference between them, what separated both men in the pocket, is that while Jeremias Ponce got off to a fast start, his punches were wider than Subriel Matias' punches at that range.
His punches were shorter, tighter, as a result got to the target faster.
Shot selection between them was very similar. What punches both boys decided to throw at that range, it was similar, but what separated them is that Subriel's punches, they were tighter.
The guard too. Defensively, Subriel was a little better.
Staying behind that guard, catching shots on the arms, countering in kind. In the pocket, he proved he is in fact a better fighter and a more heavy-handed puncher than Jeremias Ponce, who's no slouch.
He's a tough guy. Opposite the ring, somebody else, someone other than a Subriel Matias. He can give a guy a long night, give a guy hell.
Just not this guy, not Subriel Matias. You don't want to get into a pissing contest, the tough man fight.
This guy's gonna test how tough you really are.
He dropped Jeremias Ponce in the fifth round, and you could see that the fight was starting to wear on that kid.
It was.
Damage he took on was piling up fast, harkening back to the Maxim Dadashev fight.
That tragedy.
From approximately 4 years ago when Maxim Dadashev shared the ring with Subriel Matias, and he took a sustained beating. He took a lot of punishment in that fight.
They pulled him out in the 11th.
But by then, the damage was already done, and Maxim Dadashev, as a result of the injuries he sustained in the fight, injuries that were not immediately visible to the naked eye, unfortunately, he passed away. I have no doubts that the Jeremias Ponce people, they had that in mind as this fight played out, and that's why they made the decision to pull this kid out after 5 rounds.
They'd seen enough.
You know what happened in the Dadashev fight, and you see how this fight is going.
They'd seen enough.
After 5 rounds, they pulled him out. They were right to do it. They saw what direction the fight was going. Jeremias Ponce, he's a young guy. He should live to fight another day.
You don't gamble the guy's permanent health moving forward on the premise that he might be able to turn things around later on. Not opposite the ring, Subriel Matias, who's living up to his reputation.
You know, there's guys that can punch. There's lots of guys that can punch, and then, you know, you got some big punchers, and then you have destructive punchers. Subriel Matias is a member of a short list of fighters, very short list, at 140 pounds, that they don't just hit hard.
Not just.
For me and my money, it's really just him and Regis. Those are the two most destructive punchers at this weight. I want to say now that Subriel Matias is the newly crowned IBF super lightweight champion.
He's on the PBC side of things. There's one other belt over there.
One other champion, Alberto Puello of the Dominican Republic. There are rumors and rumblings that he may be facing Puello-Romero in his very next fight. Now, if Puello-Romero wins that fight, if by some chance he's able to pull it off and become a champion at 140 pounds, well, I don't think he's going to share the ring with Subriel Matias.
Suicide.
You got cold slapped at 135 pounds by a naturally smaller man
in Gervonta Davis. You go in there with Subriel Matias, that guy will change your life. I'm not kidding around. So if by some chance Rolly-Romero actually pulls it off and wins a belt at 140 pounds, if he beats Alberto Puello, I don't think a fight with Subriel Matias gets made. I don't. But if Alberto Puello, if he can hang on to that WBA title, if he wins, he'll fight Subriel. If Rolly wins, he may use that WBA title as leverage to get the winner of Garcia versus Davis in the ring. Especially if the winner ends up being Gervonta Davis.
Especially if it's Gervonta Davis. If he wins and he knocks Ryan out, well, he's not going to fight the winner of Haney versus Lomachenko or Shakur Stevenson.
He's not.
If he wins, I'd sooner expect him to move up in weight and have a rematch with Rolly-Romero for the WBA 140-pound title. That's if Rolly wins. But if Rolly loses...
If Alberto Puello wins, I think he'll fight Subriel Matias, and I think he'll lose to Subriel Matias.
That's what I think, because I don't think that Alberto Puello is busy enough, a prolific enough puncher, or a big enough puncher to keep Subriel out and off of him.
That'd be an in-house unification match that the PBC could stage without any outside involvement, hampering things.
They can make it.
If they're smart, they want to invest in the career of Subriel Matias. Get that guy maximum exposure, because he is a fighter of Puerto Rican descent. Rekindle that flame for the Puerto Rican fight fans. Subriel Matias can be for the PBC what Top Rank wanted Edgar to be.
He can do it. He's the real thing. He's the real deal, and he is this division's newly crowned IBF champion. You need to do more fights for Subriel in the tri-state area, particularly at the Barclays Center, where you can have a large contingent of Puerto Rican fight fans show up and show out to support one of their own. They need to invest in this guy and keep him busy. Don't shelf him now.
This fight was in Minneapolis at the Armory. His next one should be in New York at the Barclays.
Post-fight, immediately after the fight, newly crowned WBC champion Regis Pagarius took to his social media to congratulate Subriel Matias on his win, saying, "Hope to see you one day."
And he might, just not yet.
Currently, there are talks for a battle of the Southpaws, the transatlantic ones, Jack Catterall from the United Kingdom and Regis Pagarius from the United States. It being that the Tosh Jailer fight fell apart for Jack, he still wants to fight for a title, even if it's not Josh's title.
He's not winning Regis's title, I'll tell you that. If they make that fight and that's next, I've got Regis knocking out Jack Catterall.
I like Regis to win. Regis, who in many ways still is a network and promotional free agent. I mean, he's not with any of the major outfits that have broadcast deals. He's not with Matchroom. He's not with Top Rank. He's not with the PBC. So he does have autonomy to go where he wants to go, depending on what they offer him.
Isn't he with Pro Bellum, though?
You mean the same Pro Bellum that just went through a rebrand? They've gone from Pro Bellum to quote-unquote Disrupt Boxing.
It's still the same outfit.
They still don't have a broadcast partner, so if by some chance Regis is still with them, they still don't have the names that he needs. He still has to go elsewhere for major opportunities, major fights, and major paydays.
Why the rebrand?
For Pro Bellum? Likely because many individuals feel that Pro Bellum is just another extension of Daniel Kinahan's cartel, that Pro Bellum is just MTK by another name. The now defunct MTK, who was under scrutiny.
They closed their doors last year for being under suspicion, under scrutiny of working with Daniel Kinahan, even though they denied it several times. They said he had nothing to do with their company anymore, even though he helped found it.
The scrutiny persisted, and last year they closed their doors. The fledgling promotional company Pro Bellum,
they're suspected to be MTK just by another name.
Even if no official connection was established between Pro Bellum and MTK, that's what people think. That's what Bob Arum seems to think. He said he didn't want to work with any Pro Bellum fighters due to their connection with Daniel Kinahan, a connection that really wasn't ever established.
Wasn't established that Daniel Kinahan has anything at all to do with Pro Bellum. Pro Bellum is supposed to be helmed by Richard Schaefer.
It's the president. But as stated, the scrutiny persists, and last year Pro Bellum, they lost some broadcast deals that they were working on. They don't have a broadcast partner as a result of the scrutiny and suspicion that they're working with Daniel Kinahan behind the scenes, and now they've gone through a rebrand. Now they're called Disrupt Boxing.
Likely in an effort to put distance between themselves and those alleged alleged connections. Alleged.
Alleged because it was never established. And when last I checked, Regis Prograis was still a Probellum fighter. I don't know that he's parted ways with Probellum. I don't know that he hasn't.
But I do know there are preliminary reports of Regis Prograis crossing the Atlantic Ocean, going over to Skye, and doing a fight with Jack Catterall.
That I do know. And once again, I like Regis Prograis' chances in that fight. I think he knocks out Jack Catterall. What he does beyond that, well, there's a question.
What would it be worth to the PBC to have Regis cross over to their side of things and do a unification match with Subriel?
Between Regis and Subriel, because you're gonna have to pay to play. Regis ain't gonna fight on the cheap.
He made over $1 million in his last fight as part of a Marv Nation show. What do you think he's gonna want to unify titles with another champion like himself?
What's it gonna cost the PBC to bring him over? And is it worth their while? Well, they do it at a time when there are already 2 alphabet titles on that side of the street. Sad to say that I don't think we're on the eve of Regis Prograis versus Subriel Matias.
Even if it's obvious to most any and every fight fan familiar with these fighters, even if it's obvious that that's the fight you want to make at 140 pounds, it won't disappoint.
Not if you make it, but I don't think they're about to make it. The fight itself is a fascinating fight because Regis Prograis is the only other guy at this weight that I think is as devastating a puncher as Subriel Matias, but he's a bit more nuanced than Subriel Matias.
Yeah, I think he's got more ring IQ, more ring savvy.
Jeremiah's Ponce went in there trying to overwhelm Subriel Matias with volume, with his work rate.
That's it.
Essentially, he went in there looking for a gunfight, and he found one. And what he found out is he ain't got the bigger guns in a gun show. You don't want to bang in the booth with Subriel Matias.
Jeremiah's found that out the hard way.
Matching Subriel's output is a bad idea. It's a recipe for disaster. You don't try to match his volume. You don't try to match his power. You work around it.
Use it against him.
Can't just wing it. You can't just be gung-ho to bang in the booth with a guy like this. You have to take a more balanced approach, a delicate balance of offense and defense, picking your battles.
Regis can do that.
For my money, Regis Prograis is just as destructive a puncher as Subriel Matias, but he is more than just a puncher. More fundamentally sound, more tricky.
He's not just gonna sit there going head-to-head, toe-to-toe with this guy. He's gonna roll and counter, slip and hook.
Angle his torso away from punches and bring punches over. Change levels, keep his head off center. He can be a hard target to find in there, even in the booth, and that would effectively offset Subriel Matias's power and his volume.
The counters would.
Counterpunching. That's the ticket. Hitting Subriel Matias with shots that he doesn't see. And because Regis is an authoritative puncher, the guy hits hard.
Imagine a guy like Regis hitting you when you don't expect it, when you don't see the shot coming and you don't brace yourself for it.
I reiterate, you can't match Subriel Matias's output, his volume, and hope to win. You don't match it. You work around it. Regis can do that.
It's a 50-50 fight.
They're both devastating punchers, but I give Regis Prograis a slight edge because he's more nuanced than Subriel Matias with the same kind of power.
There is a caveat. For Regis Prograis, time is of the essence.
He's a little older than Subriel Matias. Subriel Matias is a very spry 30 years old, whereas Regis, he's 34. He's in his mid-30s.
34 going on 35.
For him, time is of the essence more so than it is for Subriel Matias. So the sooner the fight happens, the more it favors Regis.
Sooner the better, that's how it looks.
But it don't look like we're getting this fight no time soon. Just food for thought. Finally, men's welterweight news per tweet from Michael Benson. News broke yesterday that Conor Benn is reportedly set to sue the BBBofC for an expected 3.5 million pounds in damages over their handling of the situation with his positive drug tests. It's claimed Benn is seeking his Chris Eubank Jr. purse and possibly also reputational damages, according to Mail Sport.
In spite of the WBC's ruling and in spite of Conor Benn's upcoming lawsuit against the BBBofC, you may still believe that he took performance-enhancing drugs or banned substances willingly.
You might still believe that. The disconnect is this isn't about what you believe.
It's not about what I believe either.
Because this whole thing is less about belief and more about what you can actually prove. And based on the WBC's findings, they can't actually prove that the clomiphene found in Conor Benn's system came from him willingly ingesting a banned substance for a competitive edge. You can't really prove that.
If it were another drug like EPO, for example, perhaps you could make that case, but not with clomiphene.
Don't misunderstand me. I'm not actually arguing Conor Benn's innocence. I'm telling you that someone else can.
Someone else will.
They might win. Attempting to hold Conor Benn's feet to the fire may become a very expensive proposition for the BBBofC, very quickly.
Because this isn't about what you believe, this is about what you can prove.
Can they prove that Conor Benn willingly ingested a banned substance based on the findings of an anti-doping organization that they don't adhere to, don't work in tandem with?
You know, VADA doesn't have teeth per se. They can't issue out punishments. UCAD can, but it's because UCAD works in tandem with the BBBofC, and all of Conor Benn's UCAD tests came out clean.
You don't have that to hold against him.
Whether you believe his story or not, whether I believe his story or not.
This isn't about what you believe. I don't think this is about 3.5 million pounds either. I don't think it's about that. I think he's attempting to put the squeeze on the BBBofC in order to secure a boxing license in the United Kingdom. That's what I think the real play here is.
He's going to pressure them to fall back.
He's trying to get the BBBofC to stand down, and if they don't want to do that, it's going to become very expensive for them. It could cost them upwards of 3.5 million pounds on top of legal fees, and all they have to go off of are the findings from a voluntary anti-doping association they don't even work with or adhere to. So irrespective of what you believe and what I believe and what they believe,
It's not about what you believe, it's about what you can prove.
and never mind that the BBBofC was privy to this information just as long as Eddie Hearn and Matchroom were. You know, Eddie Hearn's come under fire because they're basically saying that he sat on that intel and was going to go through with the fight anyway.
That's what they're holding against him without addressing that the only reason he sat on that intel was because they were waiting for the BBBofC to adjudicate.
They were waiting on them, and they're the ones that took their sweet time.
Yeah, everybody from Conor Benn to Eddie Hearn to Chris Eubank Jr. himself, they sat on that intel for a long time, and it looked like they were going to move forward with the fight, but it's only because the BBBofC was sandbagging it.
What the hell took them so long? You're saying that they should have caught the whole goddamn thing off. You're saying they should have reached that decision. Why didn't you?
Took you so long.
Seems that their course of action was simply a reaction to the story being leaked to some periodical over there.
Kind of looks like they were going to let the fight go through until that story came out.
And now in order to save face for their organization, they want to hold Conor Benn's feet to the fire with the findings from an organization they don't even work with. They don't work with VADA.
The WBC does, and according to the WBC, Conor's clear to fight.
So what the hell's the BBBofC's problem? I'm not actually arguing in favor of Conor Benn's innocence. I'm questioning the legitimacy of the BBBofC's case against him.
Is it going to hold up?
And can they afford a long, drug-out legal battle with Conor Benn? Because this could become very expensive for them.
They're not the most well-funded organization, you know.
You not allowing Conor a boxing license in the UK could cripple his career moving forward, and for that, he's got a counter. He may cripple your organization with this legal battle.
Let the games begin.